Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Brilliant. This will feature spoilers for Venom: The Last Dance. A specter is haunting the movie-going public, the specter of the Sinister Six. For those who haven't seen the post-credits scene of Venom 3, and going by the box office, I'm guessing that's many of you, Null, a cosmic villain from the Venom comics, announces that the King in Black, meaning himself, is awake and Earth will be his. So it's a classic superhero movie villain setup for another film. Now, I really take issue with how this was handled. You can see my video on the film from a few days ago for more on that, but I felt like it was worth making an entirely separate one here to ask the question, what movie are they trying to set up here exactly? The next Holland Spider-Man, the Agony movie, some Kraven sequel, or, as I suspect, a Sinister Six movie? After Madam Web came out, I did a video talking about the state of the Sony Spidey villain universe, and I want to dip back into that here. Because between The Last Dance and some recent news about the MCU's Spider-Man 4, it seems like a good time to really examine how strange this is all getting. Before I do, I wanted to thank everyone who subscribed recently. I really appreciated seeing all the comments from you guys, and I'd love to get to that 700k subscriber count before the end of the year. If you haven't subscribed yet, but you often find yourself watching my videos, maybe think about it. It would really help boost the channel.
Hey, Fly Eater! What happened to the kid? Did he go splat or what?
Alright, so the Knoll tease. I've been kind of obsessed with this since seeing The Last Dance because I cannot quite wrap my head around what they were trying to set up. Let's go down the likely suspect list. First, there's the possibility that they're just setting up another Venom movie. The Last Dance may turn out to be the last in the series in the same way that Friday the 13th, the final chapter was, as in, not at all. That is very possible. The first Venom has been the only real notable financial success story of the Sony Spidey spinoffs, and it makes sense that the studio would not want to give him up. And the nice thing about Venom is that, at least on paper, you could make it work without Tom Hardy. I'm not saying that would be a good idea, but it is very possible. Venom has a bunch of hosts beyond Eddie Brock, and Flash Thompson's Agent Venom with his unique modified look would probably be very attractive to them as a way to reset the brand post-Hardy. Combine this with the final post-credit scene that implies a piece of Venom still lives, and that's what makes me think this is the most likely option. Or at least it would be if The Last Dance were doing better at the box office. Still, it wouldn't surprise me to see Sony try to go down a path like this, a refresh of the Venom series without its lead actor. But then there's the next option, which is what a lot of people online seem to be assuming, that Knoll will somehow factor into Tom Holland's fourth Spider-Man movie. I know a lot of people are running with this idea, but I just don't see it. For a couple reasons. There's the Disney of it all, who have successfully reduced the Sony-verse stuff in the Holland films to being a throwaway multiverse Venom scene or two in No Way Home, despite Sony clearly wanting to lean into that connection as much as they can. Whether it's the scenes with Vulture in Morbius, or the bizarre Uncle Ben connection in Madam Web, it's clear there's a ton of behind-the-scenes gamesmanship going on, where Sony is trying to make their movies part of the MCU in the audience's mind, and Disney Marvel is really pushing back on that, while having to cede some ground in service of being able to use Spidey in the MCU at all. I just don't think Marvel would let a tepidly received Venom movie directly lead into the follow-up of No Way Home. And even if they were willing to go along with that, one thing we have to keep in mind here is that Tom Holland himself now has substantially more power over the production. After No Way Home, his multi-picture deal was up, and Sony really needed to woo him back. Presumably with buckets and buckets of money and more creative control. And I just can't see Holland, who has never shared the screen with Venom and seems to avoid mentioning the Sony spin-offs as much as he can, being super into tying into those movies, especially after how the recent ones have been received. Now granted, I don't know the guy. At this point, I am speculating about a total stranger. I could be wrong here. That is a definite possibility. Tom Holland has done some interviews lately where he talks about how he feels a lot of responsibility towards the character and how he and Zendaya were very happy with the script for the next movie. Now maybe they were just thrilled with what the screenwriters cooked up for Peter Parker, where he finds the symbiote and fights off Null's invasion. But I kind of doubt it. For better or worse, Holland Spider-Man was kept out of 3 Venom movies, and I'd be really surprised if they tried to make them so essential to Peter's story now. Stranger things have happened, I guess. So let's move on to what I think is the most likely outcome here. A Sinister Six movie that brings together some characters that Sony has the rights to in some capacity. Okay, I know that sounds really vague. It would be more straightforward to say a movie with Venom, Vulture, Morbius, Madam Web and her crew of Spider-Women, etc. But considering how poorly received a lot of these movies were, I just don't see Sony paying to have like Michael Keaton's Vulture swapping quips on a team with Sydney Sweeney's Julia anytime soon. Even if that's what the end of Morbius kind of implies should happen. Maybe if Kraven is a big hit. Now we know getting a Sinister Six movie off the ground has long been a goal for Sony. They tried to set one up around the time of Amazing Spider-Man 2. I remember they had Cabin in the Woods and Angel Season 5 writer Drew Goddard attached to direct for a very long time, and then that all kind of fell apart. I like Goddard, and to be honest, I think the movie he was going to do sounds more promising than some mishmash of these Sony spin-offs using the Sinister Six name. But at least for me, it was always a really shaky idea. Like, I love the Sinister Six in their function as Spider-Man villains, especially in the really early Spidey comics and the Spectacular Spider-Man show. But as a team movie on their own, I don't know, it always felt really unnecessary. But if they want to make some Sony spin-off universe Avengers to fight Null, Sinister Six does seem like the obvious choice to go with. That just sounds like such a bad idea though. One thing I was thinking, and okay, maybe my brain has just been warped and twisted by one too many bad post-credit scenes. I honestly think they could return to the Sinister Six setup in the Amazing Spider-Man movies and kind of get away with it. The multiverse thing is well established now. Fans seem to have much warmer feelings towards the Garfield era than they ever did when those movies were coming out, and it would be a way to use cheaper versions of characters like Doc Ock and Green or Hobgoblin. Add in the characters that Sony might like to use from these recent movies, like a version of Venom or Kraven, and you probably have a film that will garner some attention, especially if you can lure Andrew Garfield back as Spider-Man for at least enough screen time to put in every trailer. Now, does this seem like a good idea? No, but if Sony is dead set on following up this Null stuff, I could see them going down a road like this that would try to capitalize on what they've already made in the past. If you're Sony and you're watching Deadpool and Wolverine score this massive box office haul with like Elektra and Pyro in tow, how could you not think about ways to reuse and recycle franchise elements from the past 20 plus years of Spider-Man movies? And I would be very curious to see how that would be greeted. Like, would Spider-Man fans go in for something like that? Or really any version of a Sinister Six movie? Without Spider-Man in it, I'm still pretty skeptical. Because unlike back in the early 2010s, the idea of a big villain team-up movie seems pretty old hat now. DC has done it twice with Suicide Squad, and Marvel is kinda set to riff on this with Thunderbolts. I don't really know, but I do think it would be a really hard sell if you had like Morbius as the lead. The real issue for Sony is that beyond their MCU Spider-Man films, and yes, I know not everyone is a fan of those, they're just not a trusted name with superhero movies anymore, at least live action ones. Their failures have been so noteworthy and so extreme with Morbius and Madam Web that I think it'll be hard to get any kind of hype or buy-in from the hardcore fans. If they want to keep making these Spider-Man villain movies, well, one, I would say don't, but two, they need to scrap their approach entirely. Yes, that would mean leaving Null as yet another superhero post-credit scene that was never followed up on, but there's already plenty of those to go around. The Spider-Verse movies have found a way to feel completely fresh and separate themselves from the MCU, while Sony's live-action stuff feels like it's trying its hardest to trick casual viewers into thinking it is the MCU. It was a bad idea at its conception, and it's a bad idea now. Period. I know this was kind of a scattered video trying to collect my thoughts on a lot of different Spidey projects, but I know I'm not alone in wondering about this stuff. So what do you think? Is there anything Sony could do to win you over to these villain movies? And if not, what kind of projects would you like to see from them? It's pretty clear that I don't consider a lot of the moves Sony's film division has made in the last couple of years very smart. But you know what is smart? Brilliant.org. Okay, that was shameless, but seriously, it is really tough as an adult to keep on the path of learning. Life and work understandably get in the way, which is why I think Brilliant.org is so valuable. They make the process of learning fun and accessible, all in service of helping you become a lifelong learner. With lessons crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and more. That's really powerful, especially when you combine it with getting interactive feedback as you work, making this a fantastic way to tackle math, science, and computer science concepts. Check out their courses on data, where you can learn how to parse and visualize mass datasets and make them easy to interpret with data from real companies like Starbucks and Airbnb. And that's just the start of what you can learn on Brilliant.org. So to try it for free for a full 30 days, visit Brilliant.org/midnight by checking that link in the description or just scan the QR code. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. That's Brilliant.org/midnight.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.